special treat, because you're getting a behind-the-scenes look at how we're training some of the behaviors for our new summer show, Summer Splashtacular. And notice that I use the word behavior, not trick. That's because everything these animals do are an extension of their natural behavior. Things like jumping, spinning, and vocalizing, to name a few examples, are all things that these animals do on their own. Our job as trainers is simply to effectively communicate to them exactly what we're asking of them. Now let's see a few examples of these behaviors with some of our animal stars. To my right, turning 16 this spring, he loves making a splash. Give it up for Cody! Next up, he's turning 18 soon, and he's a bit of a show-off, Avalon! Conditioning. Basically what that means, every time the animals do something that we like, we give them something that they like. And this is called positive reinforcement. Now we use two types of reinforcement. The first one is called primary. Now primary reinforcement is anything an animal needs to survive, such as food and water. So in our case here at Dolphin Discovery, what do you guys think we use? Fish! Right, but if we were to use fish for every session all day long, it would get very predictable and even boring. So we utilize secondary reinforcement. Now secondary reinforcement is anything other than food and water that an animal has been conditioned to find reinforcing. So what do you guys think are some examples of secondary reinforcement? Clapping, that's a good one. What else? Toys, that's a good one. Yep. Those are all different examples we can use for secondary reinforcement. Can you guys think of any secondary reinforcement that we use as humans? Let me give you a hint. It's green and we use it every day. Money, exactly. Great job, you guys. Now we try to use a balance of both primary and secondary reinforcement into every session that we have with our animals to make things more fun and unpredictable. That's right, but before we can reinforce our animals, we have to let them know that they are correct. So, Merritt, how do we do that? Merritt, why'd you blow your whistle? I was answering your question, Julianne. This is called a bridge. A bridge can be any designated sound, whether it's a whistle, a word, or a click. So it's called a bridge because it bridges the time between the animal giving the correct response and the reinforcement that follows. By hearing this bridge, they know that they've done the right thing and that reinforcement is on its way. All right, well since you're so smart, Merritt, what if we do when the animals are incorrect? Oh, excuse me, Merritt. I said, what do we do when the animals are incorrect? Okay, this is a little embarrassing. I guess she doesn't know. Actually, I just answered your question. I did exactly what we do when an animal is incorrect. I did absolutely nothing. Well, how is absolutely nothing something? It's using something called a least reinforcing scenario, or LRS for short. By doing nothing and being as least reinforcing as possible, that behavior is less likely to occur in the future. All right, I get it. So it's no big deal. But when the animals are correct, we make a really big deal out of it. That way it's more likely to reoccur. Exactly. Now you've got it. So by making not a big deal out of it and by never using punishment, we're helping to keep sessions positive for our animals. That makes sessions more fun for them and for us as well. out there. Do you understand? Okay, great. Mary, I just have one more question for you. What's that? Does this work on men?
Absolutely.
Okay, great. Well, now that you've all learned how we train a behavior, would you like to see us? Okay, great. Well, today we are going to work on a behavior called fluke ball touch. Now, with every behavior, we start with small approximations and we build onto those approximations. Kind of like learning how to read. First, you have to learn your alphabet, then you have to put those letters into words, those words into sentences, and then that sentence, those sentences make up a paragraph. Same thing here. We start with a simple behavior called a target. Vanessa's going to demonstrate that. All Avalon has to do is touch his rostrum, or that beat that he has, to her hand. Now, once he learns that, then we can move that hand target anywhere. And eventually, we needed to go out into the middle of the pool, so we use different tools. We have a target pole, or we also incorporate using these buoys that you see in the pool right now. Now, for fluke ball touch, first we have to use his flukes. Now, we're going to show you where they are. They are on his tail. So the fins at the bottom of his tail right there, those are his flukes that Avalon just demonstrated. Yeah, you can clap for him when you see something that you like. Go ahead and reinforce our animals and let them know that they're doing it correctly. There's his flukes right there, smack in the water. So we want him to use his flukes, roll over, and hit that ball that you see. So we have to ask him to roll over. So Vanessa's going to ask him there. Understand that. Another behavior. So what we're doing is we're pairing all of these behaviors together to get a bigger picture. So now we're going to ask him to roll over and then to lay out. So he is understanding that he has to roll over and then move to a target out in the middle of the pool. And he hit it with his flute, so that's very good. Now when we first trained this, they would hit it with their rostrum, maybe their pet flippers, and then eventually their tail flukes, they would learn to do that. And our bridge would indicate when they were correct. And it was okay for them to sample those different body parts until they got the one correct. And when we did that, we made a really big deal so that they understood that that was the body part that we wanted them to hit the target pole. Now, we're going to start to raise that ball a little bit off the water. This is going to help the dolphin understand that eventually they're going to have to jump out of the water. So we're going to ask him to roll over and point him over to that ball. And same thing, great job. So you'll notice that he came up a little bit out of the water. Dolphins use echolocation, so he was echolocating on that ball so he knew exactly where it was in the pool. Next thing we're going to do is we have to incorporate some sort of hand signal for the dolphin to be able to understand that this is a different behavior from all of the other behaviors that he knows. So we're going to give him that special hand signal Vanessa just gave him, and that means for that behavior. Once we start pairing it all together, great job, Avalon. Once we start pairing those all together, he'll start to understand that this new hand signal distinguishes this new behavior that he's learning. So now what we're going to do is raise that ball all the way up to where he normally hits it most successfully. So we're going to ask him to do that. Now if he does this, you guys make a lot of noise for him, let him know that he's correct and that he did a great job. He definitely feeds off your energy. Great job. Now you'll notice just the tip of his flute picked the ball, and that's okay. When the next time we ask him, he's going to know that he has to go a little bit higher out of the water to hit that ball. So we're going to challenge him a little bit. We're going to just raise that just a tiny bit slightly higher, and we're going to ask him again. So this time, since it is a challenge, make a lot more noise for him. You can